Chosen ones, you're the first pick. 7 signs God secretly favors you above all. Let me take you into a truth most people will never hear, let alone accept it's not random. The reason you felt different your whole life, the reason your journey has never looked like anyone else's, isn't coincidence. It's not bad luck. It's not you being cursed or forgotten. It's the opposite. It's a sign. A secret one. A divine one. Chosen ones are not chosen because life is easy for them. They're chosen because they carry something rare, something that can't be taught, bought, or faked. And if you've been carrying the weight of your existence like a mystery no one else can understand, this is your wake-up call. You're not just someone trying to get through life. You're not just another soul wandering. You are the first pick, hand-selected, marked, and yes, secretly favored by God above all. But here's the twist. Divine favor doesn't always look the way we think it should. It doesn't always show up as blessings raining down or doors flying open. Often, it looks like isolation, like rejection, like being misunderstood by the people you love most. Because before God elevates you, He separates you. Before He reveals who you are, He hides you sometimes in plain sight. And only the strong ones, only the ones who can hold the silence, the solitude, the long nights of not knowing, will make it through the fire without losing their essence. That's the first sign of being chosen. You've been hidden, not forgotten. If you've ever felt like you were waiting for a moment that never came, for people who never saw you, for opportunities that somehow always passed you by, maybe it's because you weren't meant to be seen until the right time, until the right frequency.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Most people don't understand this level of spiritual engineering. They think favor means fame. They think being chosen looks like being celebrated. But chosen ones aren't picked for applause, they're picked for alignment. And alignment takes time. It takes stripping away the lies, the illusions, the masks you inherited just to survive. So if your life has been a constant process of losing what you thought you needed, it's not punishment, it's precision. It's God carving you into something the world has never seen before. He doesn't want another copy. He wants the real you. And that means removing everything that's not you. Here's something else you've probably noticed. You've always had a kind of inner knowing. Even when you were young, even when you didn't have the words for it, you saw through things. You felt what people were hiding. You sensed when something was off before anyone else said it out loud. That's not paranoia. That's not being overly sensitive. That's discernment. The second sign of divine favor is spiritual intelligence, a deeper layer of truth operating in your system. And it's not something you earned. It's something you were born with. But here's the thing, until you understand how to use it, it feels like a curse. You end up in rooms where no one can meet your depth. You end up in relationships that collapse under the weight of your truth. You end up doubting yourself because everyone else seems fine pretending. But you can't fake it. You can't stay where your soul is dying. That's not dysfunction. That's your anointing refusing to be diluted. And that brings us to the third sign, radical discontent with mediocrity. Chosen ones are allergic to the ordinary, not because they think they're better, but because their soul knows it was born for something greater. And that greater might not be what the world defines as success. It might look like leading in silence, healing through presence, awakening others just by walking in your truth. But no matter how it manifests, you can feel it pulling on you, whispering to you, calling you forward even when you're tired, even when you failed, even when no one else understands why you keep going. That's not delusion. That's destiny. Let me ask you something deep. Have you ever wondered why the things that break other people barely dent you? Why you've been through storms that should have shattered your mind, your faith, your body, and yet you're still here? Not just here, but wiser, stronger, more rooted. That's the fourth sign, supernatural resilience. You've been protected in ways you can't explain. Covered, preserved. Even in your mistakes, even in your rebellion, something was watching over you. That's not luck. That's legacy. That's the fingerprint of a God who doesn't just choose you and then walk away. He stays. Even when you're silent, even when you're lost, especially then. And because of that, you've been tested more than most. That's the fifth sign. Chosen ones go through divine testing not to break them, but to prove them. To themselves, to the spirit realm, to the mission they carry. Every delay, every betrayal, every closed door. It was a classroom, not a rejection, but a refinement. You've been in spiritual boot camp, and now the world is about to see what you've become. But only if you stop questioning your worth, only if you stop comparing your timeline, only if you start owning the truth you've been favored from the beginning. And maybe the most mysterious sign of all is this: your enemies know you're chosen before you do. They sense it. That's why you've been attacked for no reason. That's why people project their insecurities onto you. That's why you're often the scapegoat, because something in your presence exposes what they're hiding. Something in your light disrupts their shadows. But that's not your problem to fix. Your job is not to shrink. It's to shine, to keep walking, to keep rising. Because the last sign, the seventh one, is this: your life is not your own. You were chosen not just to awaken, but to awaken others. And that's why you've been through so much. Because what you carry has the power to shift not just your life, but the lives around you. You are the catalyst, the permission, the proof. So I'll leave you with this. What if everything you've suffered was proof of your favor, not lack of it? What if God's silence was not absence, but strategy? What if the reason you've always felt like the outsider is because you were never meant to blend in, you were meant to lead? You've been chosen. You've been favored. Now what will you do with it? Hidden but held. Why God conceals his greatest warriors until the appointed time. There's a sacred mystery most people never understand because they're too busy trying to be seen. In a world obsessed with exposure, with going viral, with being validated and understood, the ones God truly chooses are often hidden. Not because they're unworthy, not because they're weak, but because they are still being formed. There's a pattern in every great soul's story where they disappear not physically, but energetically. They're in the room, but no one really sees them. They speak, but their voice is overlooked. Their ideas are ahead of their time. Their presence feels too deep, too different, too much for a world addicted to surface. And if you're one of those people who's lived in that hiddenness, I want you to know it was never abandonment. It was protection. God hides his greatest warriors not to punish them, but to preserve them. Because what you carry is rare. It's not for mass consumption. Not yet. It takes time to refine a soul that's been marked for destiny. You don't just get thrown into the spotlight with sacred oil on your life. You get prepared, quietly, and often painfully. Because the more influence you're called to have, the deeper your roots must grow. If your roots don't match your reach, you'll collapse. So God will hold you back while others run ahead. He'll sit you down while others are being celebrated. He'll keep you in the shadows not to shame you, but to shield you from premature exposure. Because premature exposure will destroy what hasn't matured. That's why it's been so confusing. That's why it's felt like you're always just one step behind, like the timing never quite aligns. But what if it's not that you're being delayed? What if you're being aligned? What if that hidden space you've been in is actually sacred ground? A place of gestation, a spiritual cocoon, a space where God himself is shaping the kind of character that can carry the weight of your calling. Because here's the truth, favor without formation is dangerous. Anointing without discipline is a trap. And God loves you too much to let your gift outpace your integrity. So yes, you've been hidden, but you've also been held. Held in the hands of a creator who sees the whole picture when you can only see the moment. Held in a divine timeline that doesn't bow to your impatience. Held in a rhythm that is slower, deeper, and more eternal than anything this world could ever offer. And while you felt forgotten, heaven has been whispering your name in places your feet haven't even touched yet. Your name has been echoing through realms your eyes haven't seen. Because chosen ones are spoken of before they're revealed. They are announced in the spirit long before they're recognized by man. But let me ask you something most people are afraid to even consider. What if the silence in your life has been intentional? What if the lack of recognition was never a reflection of your worth, but a divine buffer giving you time to heal, to grow, to remember who you really are before the world tries to define you? That's the sacred paradox of being chosen. You feel the weight of greatness in your bones, but the world treats you like a ghost. And in that space, your ego dies, your need for approval dies, your old identity dies. And in the ashes of that death, you find your true self, the one that doesn't need applause to know it's worthy. This is the training ground. This is the wilderness. And every chosen one walks through it. Moses spent 40 years in the desert. David was anointed king and then went back to tending sheep. Even Jesus disappeared for 30 years before stepping into his mission. You're not late. You're not behind. You're on schedule. But your schedule is not earthly, it's eternal. And when the time comes, nothing can stop your emergence. Not people, not systems, not even your own doubts. Because what God ordains, he sustains. And when he says it's your time, the very doors that once rejected you will have no choice but to open. Until then, your job is simple but sacred. Stay faithful in the hidden place. Keep becoming. Keep listening. Keep shedding the layers that were never you. Because when the world finally sees you, you won't be performing, you'll be embodying. You won't be introducing yourself, you'll be revealing what's already alive in you. That's the difference between those who chase the spotlight and those who carry the light. One burns out. The other becomes a beacon. So if you've been hidden, hear me now, you are not being punished. You are being prepared. You are not missing out. You are being positioned. And the moment you stop resisting the silence and start receiving it, you'll realize that this hidden place is not small. It's not empty. It's holy. It's where the sacred codes of your mission are being downloaded. It's where your flame is being kindled. And when the time comes, you won't need to fight for your place. You'll become it. You've been hidden, but you've also been held. And soon you'll be unleashed. Carriers of the divine code, why chosen ones experience pain that others can't understand. There's a pain that doesn't have a name. It doesn't scream. It doesn't bleed, but it echoes. It recycles. It loops in the background like a song only you can hear. And if you're a chosen one, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the weight of carrying something inside you that the world can't see, unknowing. A depth. A calling that feels too big for your body, too heavy for your heart, and too mysterious for your mind to interpret. This is not ordinary pain. This is sacred pain. It is the mark of those who carry the divine code. To be chosen is to be encoded with something ancient and powerful. Something that doesn't just live in your thoughts, but in your blood. It's in your DNA. It's in your energetic field. You were born with a frequency that disrupts the matrix of mediocrity. And because of that, life has always felt heavier, more intense. You've felt things others couldn't feel. You've seen through illusions others are still worshipping. And the burden of that awareness has made you feel like an outsider in your own life. That's not because you're broken. It's because you're wired differently. Pain comes to the chosen one not to destroy, but to awaken. And not just awaken them, but to activate the code within them. Pain is the pressure that cracks the shell of your old identity so your soul can emerge. It's not cruelty. It's initiation. But the world doesn't teach this. The world says pain is a sign something's wrong, that you need to fix it, numb it, or escape it. But chosen ones are not allowed to escape. We're not permitted to bypass, because the code we carry is only unlocked through presence, through walking directly into the fire and letting it burn away everything that isn't real. And that's why your pain has felt so personal, so targeted. Because it is. Your tests were not random. They were customized, tailored by the hand of God to break open the exact parts of you that were blocking your power. That betrayal, it didn't come to ruin your trust. It came to teach you discernment. That abandonment, it didn't come to make you bitter. It came to awaken your self-worth. That failure, it wasn't there to shame you. It was there to humble your ego so your soul could rise. These weren't just life events. They were initiations into mastery. But mastery isn't comfortable. It's not glamorous. It's raw. It's lonely. It's filled with nights where you sit in silence, asking questions no one can answer for you. And yet, even in those moments, especially in those moments, you felt something sacred hovering over you. You felt a presence, a protection, a love that defies language. That's God. That's the Spirit reminding you, you are not forgotten. You are being forged. And here's the paradox: the deeper the pain, the higher the purpose. The more intense the suffering, the more sacred the mission. Because chosen ones are not just here to live, they're here to shift timelines, to hold frequencies that will ripple through generations, to birth new realities through their very being. And to do that, they must be emptied of false identities, emptied of attachments, emptied of everything that was never theirs to begin with. So if your life has been a series of losses, understand this: nothing real can ever be taken from you. What you lost was never meant to stay. What remains is what's true. What remains is what's eternal. Let me ask you something that may stir your soul. What if your deepest pain wasn't punishment but prophecy? What if the very thing you've been trying to heal is the key to your assignment on earth? What if your suffering wasn't just something to survive, but something to translate into wisdom, into art, into truth that sets others free? That's what chosen ones do. They don't just recover. They alchemize. They turn pain into power. They turn silence into sound. They turn their lives into living scripture. And the world doesn't always understand them. How could it? Most people are still trying to escape their shadow, while you've already sat with yours, learned its language, and turned it into a teacher. That's why your presence is disruptive. That's why people project onto you. Because you've done the work they're terrified to begin. You are a mirror. And mirrors are not always welcomed. But don't let that make you shrink. Don't let that make you doubt the truth you've earned through fire. You didn't come here to please. You came here to provoke, to awaken, to remind humanity of what it forgot. So yes, your path has been painful. Yes, you've cried prayers that went unanswered. Yes, you've wondered if it's even worth it. But deep down, you know the answer. You didn't come here to live a quiet life. You came here to burn with purpose. You came here to carry the code of awakening that only pain could unlock. And now that it's open, now that it's alive in you, the world is about to feel the heat of your becoming. You are not here by chance. You are not suffering in vain. You are a living blueprint of a new reality. You are the carrier of the divine code, and your pain was the password. The unstoppable revelation, when God finally reveals why you were chosen first. There comes a moment in every chosen one's journey where the veil begins to rip. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually, like the sun rising behind thick clouds. You start to see it not with your eyes, but with your spirit. The reason? The why. The purpose behind all the pain, the isolation, the divine delays. And it doesn't come in a neat explanation. It comes in a revelation. And knowing that hits so deep you don't even need words. You just know God chose you first because He trusted you most. That's not flattery. That's the hardest truth of all. He trusted you to carry what others would collapse under. He trusted you to walk through fire and still come out with your heart intact. He trusted you to be the vessel for a light so powerful it had to be buried in darkness to be protected. This is the revelation that shifts everything. It's not that you're better. It's not that you're more special. It's that God saw something in you before the world ever laid eyes on you. He saw your endurance. He saw your loyalty. He saw your ability to keep loving even after being hurt. He saw your capacity to hold pain without transmitting it. That's why you've been tested early. That's why you've suffered in silence while others lived loudly. You weren't being punished, you were being positioned for impact. And now, finally, the time has come where the hidden becomes revealed, where the seed finally breaks the surface, not to become something new, but to show the world what was growing all along. When God reveals why you were chosen, it's not for applause. It's not for validation. It's because the assignment is ready to be released. The purpose that's been incubating in your soul begins to demand expression. You no longer move from pressure. You move from presence. You no longer chase. You attract. You no longer seek permission. You stand in divine authority. And that shift is not something you explain to people. It's something they feel. Your energy changes. Your frequency sharpens. You become unmistakable. Not because you're trying, but because you've become the message. And here's what's wild. Everything starts to make sense. The friendships that fell apart. The doors that slammed shut. The years of invisibility. You realize it was all surgical. Every loss was a clearing. Every heartbreak was a redirection. Every delay was a divine detour keeping you from places that couldn't hold your expansion. You see how God was never trying to punish you. He was preserving you. Because you couldn't afford to be contaminated by counterfeit connections. You couldn't afford to be shaped by smallness. You couldn't afford to settle into spaces that didn't honor your calling. You were the first pick, and that meant you had to be protected even when you didn't understand why the protection looked like pain. Let me ask you something only your soul can answer. What if everything you thought was working against you was actually working for you in higher dimensions? What if your rejection was actually your redirection into realms your mind couldn't comprehend at the time? What if your soul signed up for this before you were born, because it knew it could handle the weight of the mission? When that knowing lands, you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? Because when God reveals your identity, He also reveals your instruction. And that instruction is not just for you, it's for the world. Because chosen ones don't just awaken for themselves. They awaken to awaken others. You become a lighthouse, a frequency, a living signal that calls others home to their own truth. And you don't have to preach. You don't have to convince, you just are. Your presence becomes a portal. Your eyes become mirrors. Your story becomes a resonance that activates others. And suddenly, the pain you once cursed becomes the very power you carry. The suffering you once hid becomes the sacred key you now offer. That's the unstoppable revelation. You were never broken. You were being built. You were never forgotten. You were being fortified. And now, the unveiling begins. But it's not flashy. It's not loud. It's steady. It's grounded. It's inevitable. Because what God starts, He finishes. And what He hides, He reveals at the appointed time. You are stepping into that time. Not because you forced it. Not because you proved anything. But because you trusted even when it didn't make sense. You stayed when walking away would have been easier. You believed when doubt was screaming. You held on when everything in you was breaking, and that is what qualified you. So if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. If you've been wondering whether all of this has meaning, it does. If you've been asking whether you're really chosen, let me say it clearly, you are. Not because your life has been easy, but because it hasn't. Not because you've always felt strong, but because you kept standing even when you were weak. That's favor. That's destiny. That's the signature of the divine on your life. And now, the world will begin to see what heaven has known all along. You were the first pick. You were marked before you were molded. You were loved before you were launched. And now, you are ready not just to survive, but to lead. Not just to be seen, but to shine. Not just to carry the light, but to be the light. The revelation is here, and it cannot be stopped. You are chosen, and this is your time.